Okay, good morning, everybody. This is Alessandro Magno from the ELAC Dream Resource Center, and we're here once again with our um, partners from CARECEN to provide us important legal updates for this week.
Good morning, everyone. I just have a couple updates. So um, for those of you who have temporary protected status, there is a certain ruling right now that came from the Supreme Court. People with temporary protected status basically are eligible to receive a work permit. As I explained in various presentations before, it's temporary. It's not necessarily a pathway to legal permanent residency or citizenship, but having temporary protected status definitely is a huge benefit. And like I mentioned last week, that people from Haiti and Myanmar or Burma are now eligible to apply for TPS. And we're hoping that they're going to extend TPS for other countries that we're concerned about, primarily El Salvador and Honduras. And so basically, for those who lived in California or within the Ninth Circuit is the Court of Appeals that handles any state appeal from Washington, Oregon, California, and Arizona. So previously, people who had TPS were able to use just the fact that they obtained TPS as evidence that they've been lawfully admitted. And the reason why you need to be lawfully admitted is that in the future, if you ever want to apply for a green card, you have to have a lawful admission, right? So for those who enter with a visa or may have been part of their parents' immigration case and they were able to come to the US because of it lawfully, in the future, if they ever want to apply for a green card, they can use that lawful entry. But for many folks who have TPS, they don't have a lawful entry. They came here without papers. And previously, just the fact that they got TPS, they can use that as a way to eventually get a green card. However, the Supreme Court said that just getting TPS does not count as a lawful entry. This basically means that for those who have a US citizen spouse, parent, or are parents to a US citizen or are a child of a US citizen, they're going to have a lawful entry now, separate from the grant of TPS. And really what that means is that instead of being able to obtain their green card here in the US, they'll have to consular process. So it's just a two-step process where it requires them to leave the US for their interview for their green card at the US consulate in their birth country. Previously, people with TPS were able to use advanced parole, and that's basically a benefit where you can get a travel permit basically to travel anywhere outside the US and come back. But since last summer, that's no longer an option for people that have TPS. So if you have TPS and you do not have a lawful entry, as in you've never entered the United States with permission, then please schedule an appointment with me so we can discuss options. It doesn't mean that you can't ever get a green card. It just means that instead of taking one step, you may have to take two steps now. And it's very similar to what other folks who don't have TPS have to do. On the good news is that the Biden administration is now has given government attorneys, like, AKA like immigration prosecutors, more discretion over which cases it should dismiss from immigration court. So basically, under the Trump administration, every case that came forward in immigration court had to go forward. But now under the Biden administration, he's allowing those that either have a pending green card application or are eligible if they're elderly, pregnant or have a serious health condition, or there are other compelling humanitarian factors such as you're a caregiver or even a victim of a crime. Like if you are any of these folks, then it's possible that the attorney that represents you in your immigration court case has a way to convince the immigration prosecutors, the government attorneys, to drop your case so that you can just go forward with your immigration case through the agencies and not through the courts. So hopefully this means that, people who had cases before immigration court now, that will no longer be the case, and they can move forward in their immigration cases without, the scariness of being in court. Maybe, a few months from now, we'll see how effective this is, because at the end of the day, it really is up to that attorney, like the prosecutor, what they want to do. But certainly these are things that we can talk about in your in an interview, or sorry, a consultation that you schedule with me or Andrea through CARECEN. Any follow-up questions from anyone?
I do have a question, and I know this is for legal. So once the Supreme Court decided that that TPS, participants cannot apply for residency, that's the last word, or do you think it's going to be an appeal?
That's not, no. So sorry, I'm going to say the Supreme Court did not say that people with TPS cannot apply for legal permanent residency. They said that receiving TPS, so receiving temporary protected status, does not count as a lawful entry. And so for people that need to obtain a green card, you have to have a lawful entry if a family member is petitioning for you, right? So before, if you lived in California and had TPS, you can be like, oh, I got TPS, so I don't need to leave the US to get a lawful entry. I can just use my TPS as proof that I've been lawfully admitted. Everyone outside of, the Ninth Circuit and a couple other circuit courts did not have that option. So the Supreme Court basically said, yes, people who have TPS, if they want to get a green card through a family member, they have to have a lawful entry. So that if you don't have one right now, then that basically means you have to take a different route to obtain a legal permanent residency. It does not mean that you do not get legal permanent residency. It just means that something that was available to you before when you lived in California is no longer available, and you have to go through the same way that thousands of other people have to go through. So I just want to clarify that. Please don't freak out and think you don't have a lawful permanent residency chance.
Yeah, thank you for that, because I was thinking, okay, so they're not going to have an option. But for example, if I am a recipient of TPS and then I got married with an American citizen, I can go through that route to get my residency. Yes, my legal residency.
Yes, of course. So like, for example, you have TPS, let's say you came to the United States without papers, however you did that, right? Then you marry one day to a US citizen. You need, in order to apply for a lawful permanent resident card while remaining in the United States, you have to show that, one, you've been lawfully admitted, two, that you have lawful status, and three, that you're admissible, right? So if you do not have a lawful entry, that means that you have to then go to your consulate to do your green card interview rather than here in Los Angeles. And basically, once you pass your consulate interview, then you're admitted into the United States as a green card holder. For many folks who had TPS in the past, they were able to use the fact that they got TPS as their lawful entry, and they didn't have to go to the US consulate, let's say in Juarez. They could just do it all here in Los Angeles. Now they have to do the first part. This is what we do for thousands of other people because they don't have TPS. That's just like the very basics of it.
Thank you. I just made the question because I was kind of confused, And I don't know, some of our students are gonna be the same way, so, but thank you for that. Is better, I understand better now.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I just advise everyone, even when I make all these updates, they're very general. It does not necessarily, every case is very different. There may be things that prevent you from getting a green card that I don't discuss, which is why I tell everyone, please just make an appointment with us. These are things that are constantly changing. And so it's best to just meet with us regardless.
I don't know if there's any other questions, but I do want to thank you for those updates, Francis. I know it's been a very interesting and interesting week for a lot of people who had hope in this administration. I think this is another example of how things are not going in the direction that some people hope. Right, a lot of people hope that there could be a pathway toward to citizenship for a lot of these TPS recipients, and this is another obstacle now. It seems like that they'll have to overcome.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is another reason why a lot of people are like, we need to pass comprehensive immigration reform so that it's not courts who are deciding whether someone is eligible for something or not, but a bill that includes a ton of people. And the bills like the American Dream and Promise Act, that one includes people who have TPS and offers them a pathway to citizenship. That kind of gets rid of all of this confusion about the courts. And so it's really just hoping that something passes in Congress at this point. But please, if you have TPS, and if I confused you more than clarified things for you, please just schedule an appointment with us and we can go over it. It's also an opportunity for me to like screen you for other things that you may not know you were eligible for.
Thank you, Francis. And with that said, can you please, I know that CARECEN is part of the TPS Alliance. Can you please, if you have any information on the next mobilization or gathering for people to be able to engage in this conversation?
Yeah, I suggest just following CARECEN on Instagram, CARECEN Los Angeles, and CARECEN Community Colleges on Instagram. That's where all the campaign information is on. Also on CARECEN Los Angeles Facebook.
Thank you so much, Francis. So there you have it, everybody. Engage, participate. CARECEN does much more than just give us legal updates and support our students with legal counsel. They are, if I may, at the front lines, really fighting for immigration reform, immigration rights of people, of migrants. So thank you so much for all that you do, Francis and Andrea, who's also on the line. And thank you for providing us these legal updates this week.
Of course, thank you. See you all next week.
Thank you.